I know how badly you want the formula for healing. Just show me the process that works every time, no matter what's going on for the body, mind, nervous system. And it makes a lot of sense, but it can very easily turn into like a sense of pressure and self-blame when you're following a technique, which most of you are, and then it doesn't seem to work. It's like, I guess it's my fault I'm not doing it right. So what I want to do in this conversation here is help take some of the pressure off and really give you a different way of orienting to this whole topic of what is the process for healing. I use certain techniques and I have frameworks that I find very helpful. And no matter how much I learn about trauma and the nervous system and all of the good things I've learned over the years, remember, healing doesn't happen to the abstract idea of a nervous system, right? Healing happens for you, a very unique and specific person with your own body, its own history, your life history and context. So it can feel a little unsettling first to hear the news that, healing doesn't really follow a formula. It's more nuanced than that, even within best practices. That also, interestingly, I've been finding more and more when having this conversation with people, can provide a sense of relief because there's an understanding of, wait, this is going to be more of a process of self-discovery. So rather than like, oh my God, I've been doing this technique for 5 months, shouldn't it have changed by now? It's much more of a, okay, what am I learning about myself? How am I relating to the technique? How do I relate to my own thoughts, feelings, and emotions? And then you can start to see progress in these much more subtle and meaningful ways about how you're learning to be with things and process things versus I'm supposed to just follow these steps and then everything resolves itself. So how do we start to orient more in this self-discovery way? Well, an interesting part to it is it starts actually with acknowledging with compassion the part of us and the voice in the head that's really saying, dude, you need to find the step-by-step check 1, 2, 3 process. And we need to start now, especially, right, if your life situation is somewhat urgent. So it's meeting that part of yourself with understanding and saying, yeah, of course you want that, right? We all want that. But also bringing in the nuance of, yes, we want to find the best information we can and maybe even find tools that resonate with us, but we are unique. We are going to have our own processes here. It's going to be our own unique journey. So some personality types or being in a particular nervous system state because of your life situation could take, even if, let's say, I could give you the perfect protocol. I make this amazing discovery. Well, believe it or not, there are certain conditions where you would turn that into, oh, wait, did I do it for the right number of minutes? Did I do the meditation correctly? Did I eat the wrong thing in between? So instead of it being a protocol that actually contributes to your feeling safe, it becomes a task. It becomes another thing to do on the to-do list. I've seen this countless times, right? The huge irony, you could have a technique where you're telling yourself I'm safe. Maybe even you're tapping while doing it. But because of the state you're in or a personality type, it's like, okay, did I tell myself I'm safe 200 times today while tapping? Because, if I don't do that, then the nervous system's not going to feel safe and nothing's going to work. And of course, safety is not being communicated from that energy. That's not because necessarily the technique you're doing is bad. You're not a bad person because that's happening. It's something we have to start to understand. Wait, what state am I in? How am I relating to the particular technique that I am employing? Another factor why there can't just be a protocol is that whatever the situation is you're working on, there could be a variety of contributing factors, right? So there could be a very big emotional component. Let's take, for example, chronic pain or even acute pain, right? Absolutely, stress and emotional conditions can be contributing to that. Sometimes a really impressively surprising amount, but you also could have something physical, musculoskeletal, something going on that needs some attention. There's also, even within that, right, the sensitivity of your own nervous system, the context of your life. And when I say this, it's important to tune in and see if there's that sort of same protective part of you going, oh my God, I need to figure that out. Wait, what percentage of my situation is caused by emotional trauma or something unresolved? Is it 20% physical and structural? Again, meet that voice, that feeling with compassion. And then for your own sort of how to, think of it more like an openness, right? Let me be open to what might be contributing rather than trying to arrive at a conclusion or a sense of certainty. Because it's a nuanced exploratory process. Right? So when I had a physical injury a couple of years ago that required surgery, I was already deep into this work. I'm pretty sure there's no amount of tapping I could have done that would have by itself addressed some of the postural, like the physical therapy. Okay, what muscles are being over-exercised, under-exercised, etc. It was part of the process. I will never know how much of the emotional processing I did helped for the resolution of that, how much the physical therapy, etc. But I can tell you, I owe a lot to the physical therapist. I owe a lot to the people I tapped with. They both played a role. That openness about it. Also, it can be very surprising. That's why the openness is important. Because you could be someone like I was, where it's like, well, hey, I eat healthy, I do a lot of yoga and stuff, so posture, body stuff should be fine. It actually wasn't, right? It was just a thought in my head that because I did these things, that everything was just probably in good alignment. Similarly with people with emotional work, I've worked with so many people that, they wouldn't describe themselves as having had like severe traumas or anything like that. And they may go about their lives with, yeah, I'm generally a pretty, positive person. But we start going into a particular subject where there's a lot of triggering and things going on. And it's absolutely stunning how much like unprocessed emotion, how much unfelt emotion is there. Because the mind snapshot of who we are or our life wouldn't necessarily account for it. So maintain that openness. That's the way. There's no downside to processing your emotions and working through traumas. That's going to help. It just may not be the whole picture. Another thing to consider here, probably the last thing about this, is there's different capacities, right? And different abilities people have in different aspects of this type of work. So for example, let's say you're listening to some exercise, guided meditation or something, and it says, feel into your body. Or it's an emotional work process. Where do you feel that emotion in your body? Now, someone who can do that because of training or they just intuitively know how, they're going to get a lot more out of that exercise than if you're someone who responds to the question of like, where do you feel that in your body with what on earth are you talking about? I don't feel anything. Again, you're not a worse person. The technique is not bad. Like, where do you feel something in your body can be incredibly powerful. But one person can do it, one can't. The person who doesn't know how to do that is going to need a more nuanced explanation, going to maybe need some more guidance. So again, that's why we can't just say, well, do the feel your body exercise for 2 months and you're going to be gold. Because it is just a very, very personal thing. So yeah, it's about this orientation to yourself as a process of self-discovery, not like find the perfect technique, and execute. Discernment over grasping for what tools to use, and also that openness of a tool might work for you for a while, then you might outgrow it. It might be time for something else. You might start feeling your body more and then being like, oh, now it's time for me to like go into more of a somatic exploration here because this seems really right for me. It's a self-discovery process. That is the path to more humane, kind to yourself, actual sustainable healing, as much as I wish I could give you the 3 steps to follow. So if you want to explore more of this self-relationship approach, there is a free ebook in the description that will explain more of that to you. Hope it helps and love to hear your comments. Thanks.